So there were a couple of questions on registration for the webinar.
Yes.
Asking, I don't have a will.
Yes.
Will all of my assets go to my wife? So the first step we've talked about is
no administrator.
Yep.
That's the first problem.
Yep.
The second problem is that your estate will be distributed according to an Act of Parliament in your state or territory.
Okay.
So every state and territory will have their own what's called an intestacy regime or intestacy formula, and that will set out who gets what. Now, I'm in Victoria, so in Victoria, the surviving spouse gets the first $100,000 of the estate,
right,
plus a third of the balance, and any children will get the remaining 2/3. Now that varies from state to state, but there'll be a similar type of formula in every state. So if it's just a spouse, the spouse will get everything. But if there are children, the spouse won't get everything.
Even adult children.
Even adult children.
So the scenario is you own your own home. The home's worth $500,000.
Yes.
For some reason, it's owned in one spouse's
Correct.
name. It was maybe a tax advantage or something previously. The spouse who owns the home dies. Apart from $50,000 in superannuation, all they own is the house.
Yep.
And $50,000. So in that case, let's say it's the wife in this scenario is surviving.
Yes.
She'll get $100,000 of
Yes.
the $550,000 estate.
Yes.
And a third of the remaining $450,000. So another $150,000.
Yep.
But the rest of it has to go to children.
Correct.
And if they didn't have, if they weren't prepared to let her stay in the house, she would have to sell the house and move somewhere else, for example.
Or worse, challenge the will, or challenge the intestacy.
Yes.
And who knows where that'll end up. And look, I've seen those scenarios happen, particularly in blended families, where the husband has owned the family home, second wife has lived in the family home, husband dies intestate because he couldn't work out how to divide it. His children were not keen on the stepmother staying in the family home. Her entitlement was not as great as the value of the family home, and so she was in strife, and that ended up in dispute. So it can happen very easily.
Is it safe to say, well, not safe to say, but is it a general rule of thumb that if you do have a simple scenario where it just is a husband and wife,
Yes.
that intestacy
Yes.
is going to cause a lot less issues than if there's blended families and that sort of thing?
And
But it's still a significant issue.
Husband and wife, if that's all you've got,
Yep.
then when the first one of them dies, it's simple.
Yep.
Because they will be entitled to everything on intestacy. Now, if the survivor doesn't then go and make a will, then that might get a little more complicated, because you've then got to start looking around for next of kin, in degrees. And so if relatives of the first spouse to die expected to get something, they're not going to, because it's all going to go to the next of kin of the second of them to die.
Yes.
So that principle will stand true for the first to die. It might create problems when the second of them dies intestate.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the point is it's worth the dollars that you put into getting a will set up.
Even if it's a one-pager.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't have to be complicated to avoid those problems.
Yes.